Hey guys, welcome back to another educational video. This is the youtube.com/GenericTechSupport channel. If you guys are watching this, you should know that everything we do is for educational value. All the software is purchased or used under legal availability. This channel does not promote or suggest the use of pirated software. All links are located on the Tech Guy 1 wiki page. This channel, again, is for educational purposes only. Like and subscribe for more content. I provide you guys the best practices or best experience and insight into doing things, but I don't know everything. So if you guys know something that I don't, please leave it in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Hey guys, welcome to another Windows video. In today's video, we're going to look at Windows Ventura Edition. And specifically what this is a port of Windows 11. It is built on the Windows 11 platform, but it is actually designed to mimic and look specifically like MACOS. So let's take a look at this and see what this package actually looks like and how it functions. So from what I understand or gather of the history of this particular operating system is this operating system was released to the public in 2023, but only to 1,000 subscribers of a specific YouTube channel. There's not really any additional information on this that's out there, and as we could see already during the installation process, I've already gotten an error message that indicates that I'm going to have to restart the installation. So something's a little funky on this already, so let's continue on this process and see if we could get this operating system installed. Okie dokie, so let's just click on OK. So obviously it is now restarting the installation. Maybe it'll work this time. I don't know. I might have to allocate more resources to this. Maybe it's a resource issue. Again, it's supposed to be a clone of macOS, so it's possible it requires more resources that I'm giving it. So currently I have 4 cores and 8 gigs of memory on it, but maybe it needs, I don't know, 16 gigs of memory. I could give it 8 cores. Okay, so we got to the point now where we can format the drive. Again, 40 gigs of drive space. Let's see what happens. We might have to allocate more space to this system in order for this installation to take place. Alright, so it appears that this time, for whatever reason, it is installing. So maybe it's something buggy with VMware. So let's continue on the process. So we just booted. We just came back up. We got prompted for a compression configuration, whatever that is. So it is now compressing data, and we are continuing to boot. I do find it interesting, though, that we do have what appears to be the Apple toolbar in our Windows 11 system. So this is going to be an interesting one. Okay guys, so this operating system just came back up after that script ran for probably a good 30 minutes. It's actually crazy how big that script is. So I'd like to give a special thanks to whoever the developers were who developed this particular operating system. They go by the name of Harbour of Techs, and from what I understand, they're based out of Japan. So whoever you guys are, you guys did phenomenal scripting, because that scripting procedure, I watched that whole thing through that compression area there, and that's off the chain. So you guys put a lot of effort into that. Not only that, but I mean, look at the operating system. It looks just like Mac OS, but it's not. This is Windows 11. Now we'll have to check on the build number, but I'm pretty sure it's 22H2 as well. So let's jump into this thing. I'll be honest, I'm not really a Mac guy, so as far as where I go to access things in Windows through the Mac operating system, I'm not entirely sure. I'm guessing settings down here is actually settings, but then I'm not sure. Yeah, so we do have settings. So we have the ability to get to the control panel. Here's a better question. Is can we run Windows key R? We can. So we do have a run command in here. That's cool. God, I hate the UI in Windows 11. And having the Mac interface over the top of it doesn't really make it all that much easier for me. But it is interesting that our Apple logo out here is the start menu for Windows 11. Again, presumably this is Windows 11. Let's see if we can get into this PC and choose properties. Yeah, so it's Windows 11 Pro Insider Preview. And it is running. Again, Harbour of Techs, special thanks to them. But if you look at the model, Mac OS Ventura, that's pretty awesome. So let's drive this a little bit. Let's take a look to see specifically what this OS looks like. So we know settings goes to settings. I'm guessing that's going to go to the Microsoft Store if I click on it. Or at least try to. I don't have an internet connection on this machine. We have the calculator. We have Notepad. I'm guessing that's calendar. Yep, that's calendar. Microsoft Big Maps or something like that. Yep. Is that an actual iTunes? This may not work because I'm not connected to the internet, so I don't know if it's going to try to download a package that it can't get to. The question is that really Safari, or is that going to yeah, so is this... Oop, this is Chrome, so that's cool. So if you launch the Safari icon, you get Chrome. That just opens up our start menu. What does that do? All right, that gets us to our, I guess, my computer. So this is kind of interesting. The way this is laid out and the way this is developed is just super awesome. It really is. The guys that did the dev work on this thing, it's very smooth and it works extremely well to interface directly with the Windows 11 configuration. Let's see if we do a Windows key R again, and we do CMD, and we do system info. Let's see what version we're running. So this is Windows 11 Pro. Build number is 25163. So technically this is not 22H2, but technically it is 22H2. It's the preview version, or the insider preview version. So as such, it's not a release version. So there's no way for me to compare this to something else. I don't have the insider preview running on anything else, even in a vanilla version, so for us to test with a Nessus scanner to see if this does any better or worse. Presumably it would do the same. And the reason why I say that is because the configuration that's in place here is really not one to increase security or to make it more capable of playing games. It doesn't appear to change anything during the installation process other than just the way it looks, the graphics of it. And just in that alone, it's pretty awesome. If you like the Apple UI, but you want the functionality of actually running executables, I mean, this is a pretty sweet package to have. Now the question is can we patch this Insider Preview version to 22H2? And then once we get that patched, can we run all the updates on it and then scan it to actually see if it does show anything? Chances are that if we install the upgrade to it, we'll probably break it. The reason why is because this is all, generally, these configurations, once you do the roll-ups, you hose the configurations because they're not designed to run, or because the Windows operating system, the way it works, is not like a service pack from back in the day where it just replaces system files. It's basically a reconfiguration of your full OS. So I don't really want to do that because I don't want to break the graphics of the actual machine because it is pretty amazing. So let's take a look at this HT's Toolbox and see what's in here. So we have an executable in here. Let's launch this and see what happens. Oh, this is interesting. All right, so it looks like the first thing we're going to do on this thing before we do anything further is install our VMware tools on here so we can get full screen so we can see everything that's going on. Okay guys, so now we're back and we have our VM tools installed, so that way we should be able to see this full screen, which we can. So now we got a little more real estate to work with here. Let's take a look and see what this toolbox actually gives us the ability to do. So once again, this is our friends over at Harbour of Tech. So we have the ability to install Chrome, install drivers, turn on and off the paging files, which again, this is not a Linux-based system, so I don't know why you would turn off the page file. Even if you have 256 gigs of memory, even if you have a terabyte of memory, you can't turn off the page file in Windows. It's just not a good idea. Not only that, but even if you disable it, it's still going to swap a little bit of the operating system, and it's not going to give you the ability to turn the page file off. The only thing you're going to end up with latency, and that's about it. If you don't want the page file to run Linux or Mac. Don't run a Windows operating system. Okay, so that leaves us with compressing the OS. Compressing the OS is not a good idea. So the reason why you compress an OS or all the data on the OS drive is to save space. And if the operating system has gotten enormous where you need to compress the OS, then realistically, this is not the option you want to use. You want something that gives you the ability to compress only the files that you're not going to constantly access, and not the operating system itself. You don't want to compress the operating system. The reason why is because the way Windows will actually read, the way Microsoft reads the data on the disk, is it has to decompress it first before it reads it, and then once it's done reading it, it will recompress the data. So that means that it's continuously going to uncompress, recompress, uncompress, recompress, uncompress, recompress every time it needs to read something. So if you have a lot of data on your disk that you use for gaming, and you compress the operating system itself, the OS itself is just going to continuously uncompress or decompress itself to recompress itself every time it needs to read something, which is going to cause extremely high disk I/O rates, which is going to cause everything to get extremely slow when you're trying to use it for gaming or anything else that you would use a computer for. So this is a bad idea. Hopefully this isn't what it means, but I have a feeling it is what it means. Then we have the enable and disable Windows updates, which, again, I can understand why people would want to do it. I don't think it's a good idea because the Windows updates in Windows 11 at least also control your if you pay for like Office 365, your Defender platform actually runs your anti-spam crap on your actual in Outlook. So if you disable the Windows updates, you're not going to get the updated spam lists. So there's that. Then you also don't get the updated firewall stuff. So there's that. And you also don't get the updated Defender antivirus stuff. And there's that. So if you disable this stuff, then you're basically running blind or without any security on your system. Make sure you have a good antivirus from a third-party company if you're going to disable this garbage. If not, then just leave it enabled. It's not going to kill you as long as you run the updates and make sure your system's up to date. Then it won't be that annoying because it'll already be updated. Which leads us to this: disable automatic RAM cleaning. So the issue here is that this doesn't really make sense in a computer world, and I have a feeling the reason why is because Harbour of Tech is based out of Japan, and the translation isn't well done between English and Japanese. Anybody that's watched like the old Top Gear episodes know specifically when they went to Japan, some of the stuff that they found that was translated into English wasn't really stuff that you wanted to have translated, and if it was translated, it wasn't translated well. With that said, the disable automatic RAM cleaning. I have a feeling what that means is disabling your page file cache. So in other words, like in Windows, there's a way to disable not only the page file, like turning off your page file, but you could set your page file to clear the system cache on system reboot, which in a business type of scenario where you work with like large spreadsheets with an AutoCAD or SolidWorks, those particular applications, if you work on like large fluid dynamical, like 3D renderings, things of that nature, where you work on one project at a time and you want to disable your page file to cache, what you'll do is you can basically set the page file to clear on system reboot. So when that happens, if you go from one project and you finish the project and you reboot the system will wipe the memory on your RAM wipes on system reboot anyway. When the system loses power, the RAM will wipe itself. The random access memory clears on system reboot. The page file, on the other hand, usually retains the data. So that way it could quickly swap back to the memory when you boot the system. That's why in gaming, you don't want to disable the ability for that to happen, or rather, you don't want to set the page file to clear on system reboot, because when the system comes back up after it's been rebooted and the memory, the RAM has been cleared, that page file is going to save you time. So it's going to write the memory to your RAM so the system could use the RAM to pull the data, because the RAM is much faster than your solid state drive is. It's much faster than your NVMe drive is. It's much faster than any disk that's plugged into that system on a typical desktop. I mean, you might get close to it if you're running NVMe on a shelf through a fiber connection or a fiber channel to a SCSI card plugged into your PCI Express slot, and you have this ridiculous $10,000 server. Then you might get close, but otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere near as fast as like a DDR5 memory configuration. So as a result, what happens here is if you clear your page file on system reboot, when the system comes back up, the memory is clean and the page file is clean. So anything that you would usually do when you start up the machine is going to lag until that system caches those actions. And once it caches those actions, then it swaps between the memory and the page file on the actual system. And then as it does that, it's quicker because it knows that your typical, you log in, you click on start. So it knows that you click on start 90% of the time, so it'll swap that information in, which makes it faster when you click on start because it'll automatically render all the information in your start menu. Now, if you are the type of person that does 15 million things, then those 15 million things get cached inside that page file, which will make that page file bigger, and that'll swap to your memory. Now, if you have tons of memory, like 256 gigs of memory, then really you want 2.5 times the amount of drive space so you can properly swap that information between the two things, especially on a 64-bit system. Now, the thing is it's a double-edged sword, because the more memory you have, the faster your system will be. However, the more memory you have, generally the more page file you have. And the more things you do that connect to page file, the slower the system is. So generally speaking, once you get to a certain level of memory utilization, like where, say, you have 64 gigs of memory, that's when I would tell you to go the other way and start to reduce the page file size manually, so that way you don't swap as much information between the hard disk and the RAM, so you can keep the system running and retain the speed. So there's a lot involved in this, and clicking this button is not going to do all of those things. So I would kind of avoid this, and if you ever want to tweak the operating system and make your system faster, throw something down in the comments, and I'll show you guys how to do this. Because using these buttons to take some cheap or quick way to fix this is not generally the way you want to do it. It's not a one-stop for everybody. Everybody that does anything on computers usually uses the computer slightly different than the next person, and as a result, having a one-stop click where you click it may work for some people, but it's not going to work for everybody. So if you guys want to know how to properly do this, shoot something down in the comments. I'll show you guys how to tweak your system so you can get more performance out of them, especially if they're older. Just put down what you run as a processor, how much memory you have, and what kind of hard drive, and also how much hard drive space you have left. And we could tackle that together. I'll put together a video for you, try to mimic your processor and your configuration the best we can. We could even sandbox it. We can run some performance tests on it to see if we could get anything out of it to show any increases in performance. But I could show you too, like the double-edged sword, where we will see where performance increases to a point with more memory, but then will eventually decrease because of the page or the swap file configuration. So yeah, just let me know down below. As far as the rest of the stuff is concerned, it's just, buy the premium version, about, and quit. So there's not really much else in here, but I like the fact that they did give you the ability to install Chrome. I don't know what install drivers actually does. The concern is are these drivers signed? Where are these drivers coming from? It's a little bizarre that this would be in here. I have no internet connection, but I am tempted to just click on this thing right quick and see what it actually does. So the software that launches is actually Driver Booster, and I have used this in the past in the sense that I've seen it on other machines. And honestly, I honestly don't know if it's not a scam. And the reason why I say that is because, yeah, it's a legitimate company. I believe it's IOBit that actually runs it or owns it. But the problem is that it's not necessarily pulling the drivers from the website. It pulls it from the Microsoft Windows Update site for drivers. So WSUS with driver updates, that's basically what you're pulling back. And at that point, why wouldn't you just use the Windows Update to update the drivers? Because at least then you're getting them from a reputable location. You know where they're coming from, and nobody's messing with them in the middle. Whereas when you run it through here, I don't think I would do that. There's too many what-ifs with that configuration that I would ever try that. Now that said, that configuration, IOBit, that software, like I said, it's been around about 20 years or so. In the days of like Windows XP, Windows Vista, even Windows 7, before really the packages were there for like your driver support, I could see using it then, because we used to have to use like Bell Arc Advisor to find the drivers, and then you had to go through like all these steps and all this junk in order to find the correct drivers to get your operating systems to run correctly. And in that kind of configuration, that software was a lifesaver. But now that Microsoft's kind of provided the drivers for you through the Windows Update, as soon as you have a NIC driver, you can just plug the thing into the internet and download your drivers right from Microsoft. And while those aren't the best drivers to use, you should really use the manufacturer's drivers. It does give you the ability to at least patch the drivers or install the drivers that are available through the update catalog. So companies like Lenovo and HP, they don't even make their drivers in-house anymore or support their desktops in-house. All their drivers are written through Microsoft, through the third-party service company. So Intel writes a specific driver for Microsoft to release through a Windows update. It's branded through Microsoft as a Microsoft driver. That's the driver you get when you buy an HP or a Lenovo at this point. Whereas if you buy a Dell, you still get a cab file with all the drivers installed, and they are provided by Dell through the manufacturer. So they run the latest version of the driver that is supported by your operating system, which is why, generally speaking, if you're going to buy a new desktop, you're going to buy an OEM, I would stay the heck away from HP and Lenovo, especially post-COVID with this Windows 11 junk that they're doing now. Okay, so I digressed way outside of topic here, but let's close out of this thing here and now take a look further into this operating system to see what else we got going on here. My question is this HT file? I'm really curious what this is, so let's see if we could open this with like Notepad or something to see what's in here. It's interesting. So we can't even open it. Oh, I guess it's 33 meg. That's probably why. Maybe if we use Notepad++, we can, but I don't think that's installed on here. Let's take a look what else is installed on here. Let's go to All Programs. Actually, let's go to Control Panel and then go to Add Remove Programs on the system. Now let's take a look to see what else is installed on here. So it looks like pretty much the standard. We have Rocket Dock. We have Start is back. We have a Theme Patcher. Microsoft Edge is installed and Microsoft Chrome, or rather Google Chrome. Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome are Chromium, so they're both technically not, I don't know, they're both Chromium. At any rate, let's see what else is on here. Let's do Windows features, see what else is installed. So we do have the later version of .NET 4.8 installed, which is cool. Let's see what media features. We have Windows Media Player. We have Print to PDF. API support. We have SMB Direct is configured and enabled. So it's really just basically your Windows 11 stuff. Let's see if there's any updates installed. Yeah, there's no updates installed, but I kind of expected that just because, again, we're on a preview version, so that's to be expected. Let's take a look and see if we have anything. So right-click still works, so that's cool, but again, that's because we know the dock from previous videos. But let's take a look at our netstack command and let's see if there's anything listening. So I'm sure we've looked at this port in the past, but we notice now on this particular system that I have port 5040 listening with PID 3412. So open up Task Manager to see what that is, and we can see that 3412 is under a service host. So let's take a look to see what that actually is. So task list, let's see, find, two. So that's the CPD SVC. Now, I'm sure we've gone over this in the past, but basically what this is the CDP service is the service that would be used to control your Xbox or the Bluetooth negotiation connection between your phone and the device. Or it could be a Bluetooth printer or Bluetooth headphones or Bluetooth mouse. So this service controls the communication of the Bluetooth configuration as well as your Xbox integration configuration into Windows 11. Now, if you don't use those things, you have a wired mouse or you have a radio configured mouse where it's like a Logitech with a little dongle, those are usually not Bluetooth. If that's the case, then you really don't need this turned on. And this has been known to be a cause of high CPU usage in Windows 11 platform. Now, in Windows 10, it existed, but it was called the CDP and not the CDP SVC. In Windows 10 also, it wasn't turned on by default. In Windows 11, it's always on. It's set to automatic. Whereas in Windows 10, it was set to manual, and unless something was actually interacting with it to actually trigger it to turn on, it wasn't on. So if you don't want this running, the problem is in Windows 11, they kind of changed your permission or your access controls on it. So I'm going to write out how this would go, and this is just for this particular version, so this is likely going to be on most 22H2 systems, as well as the build preview, which I think later became the 22H2 system. But I know in 21H2, there's a slight difference. So you'll actually have to run your commands here to pull back your listening port for port 5040. Grab the PID number. Obviously, the PID number is going to be different from your machine to this one because it's based off of what it's running at the time. After we reboot, this PID number would not be the same even on this machine. So with that said, we need to see what that PID number comes back as, whether or not it's the CDP or if it's the CDP SVC. And then after that, we're going to run our seconfig command, and we're going to take ownership of this. Now, something also that has changed multiple times throughout the past couple of years is how this command works. So seconfig, the name of the actual service, which is going to be listed here. So if you do like this command, you pull back that PID, you'll see that service name next to it. So there's a service name. In the GUI, you could find that as well under your services console. It'll be under the, I think under the description is what the actual service name is. We can take a look at that here real quick. So there we go. So inside the services console, the service name is going to be the same name as what you need to look for. It's not going to be the display name. I apologize. I wasn't looking at it, but the service name itself is what we're looking for. Okay, so back in our command line here, we'll see the seconfig service name, and then we're going to do type own. Now, keep in mind that this changed at some point, because at one point, I think it was in Windows 7, it would have been type space own. But in Windows 11, there is no space. Also, keep in mind that in a version of Windows 11, which I don't know when it was because they changed this, and it wasn't like it was 21H2 to 22H2. There was actually a KB or a patch somewhere along the lines that changed this, but it goes from own to user own, and that is the command then to take ownership of something. And then there was another update that took place in Windows 11 at some point that changed it back to own. So I don't know specifically when that takes place, but now at least you know that if it doesn't work or throws an error, you could try those variables to see if you can take ownership. Now, if in the event that you say, well, can't I just do this? And you can, is just type out that and you'll throw an error, and that error is going to tell you that it's missing something. And if you go down here, you'll actually see what you could use. And you'll see here, user own, and then there's own. But user own doesn't exist in this version, whereas own does exist in this version. So like I said, there's something funky in this caused by Windows, a bug maybe, or just some sloppy development work, neither of which would I be surprised with Windows 11. But once we do that, and we type that, and we hit enter, we'll see the change configuration for successful. And at that point, if we reboot the system, now we could go into our services console and we could disable that service. But prior to that, we wouldn't have had permission to disable that service. And that's how you could disable it, so you could get rid of that Xbox listener on your Windows 11 system. Okay, so the system's back up. As you can see, it disabled the actual CDP SVC. I have it set to disable, it's set to stop. So now if we go back into our command line, you can see that 5040 is gone because we've killed the processor identifier from listening on that port. So again, this machine would never in a million years have an Xbox connected to it, especially since it's a virtual machine and it's a homebrew, a home build machine. I don't see any reason why I would ever use it for that. But at any rate, that's how you kill that service, so you don't have that listening in the background. The irony is that port 5040 was actually used for the WannaCry ransomware back in the Windows XP days. So just keep that in mind, that if you have an old school antivirus, it may pick that port up and see it as virus anyway. Okay, so now that we've disabled something in this operating system that really would have been enabled on all versions of Windows 11, I just figured we would go over it. The rest of this operating system looks pretty well polished. I don't see anything else in here that I would call vindictive. And honestly, what we just did wouldn't be vindictive anyway. That's part of Microsoft's package. But it really is smooth. It really does run pretty well. It doesn't seem very buggy. Everything that I've clicked on so far seems to have worked. It seems very well developed, with the exception of maybe the translation of some of the functions or features to the operating system, it all seems to work pretty well. So let's throw a scan on this thing and see what it comes back with Nessus, but I expect it to do just as well as all Windows 11 operating systems will. So let's take a look and see what that comes back with. Okay guys, so this is our Windows 11 vanilla baseline, and this particular operating system is 22H2 that has been scanned. Now with that said, realizing that the preview edition, the dev version, is not going to be exactly the same. So with that said, this is, I would say, what our expectations should be from a scan perspective, in that we have 1 high, 5 medium, and 53 info. That's about what our standard out-of-the-box configuration is going to be for our Windows 11 system. And our high, once again, is our SMB configuration and not requiring signature. We already know that it exists. We've known that it existed for almost 6 months now, then Microsoft still hasn't fixed it. So that's basically what our baseline configuration should be for our Windows 11 Vanilla Edition. So now let's take a look at our configuration that we did here for our Ventura Edition, or Edition, basically Windows 11 with a Mac wrapper. And actually it does pretty good. We have 1 medium and 65 info, and once again it's the SMB signing configuration. So realistically, this operating system, this Ventura operating system, is actually more secure out of the box than our Windows 11 22H2 full-blown build, the non-dev version. And it could be configuration based in that the development version doesn't have additional function and features in it. Chances are the thing that we turned off for our Xbox probably did make any changes whatsoever in the scan. I don't think that that shows up in the scan, but you know, from a security perspective, shutting off specific ports to limit the amount of possible intrusion points, the more you do, obviously, the better the OS is going to be, as from a security perspective. With that said, this is pretty good out of the box, 65 and 1, and obviously if we run that script, we could bring this down to 64 or 66 or whatever it would be. It would still show the SMB configuration. It would just show as an info. So we would no longer have the medium, which would make this a pretty secure version of Windows 11 out of the box, all things considered, as a homegrown or homebrew-based operating system. Let me know what you guys think. Was this something that you guys think you would run, this Ventura edition of Windows 11? And then, obviously, without the ability to patch it, do you guys really think it's worth running, even knowing that it's actually not that bad still? Although it's not that old. You know, give it some time, and this number will get worse because we can't patch it. Alright guys, so I'm going to end this video here, but let me know down in the comments, do you think there's a market for something like this? Is this something you could see yourself running, a Windows-based operating system that looks like a Macintosh? I'll be honest, it's not terrible. I mean, it does work. It's just, it's a little clunky with the menu system the way it is in a Windows operating system. It works well in Linux and it works well in Mac, but having all these different options in different places doing different things, it's a little much. And quite frankly, Windows 11 as it is a little messy. It's not well polished, it's not well developed, there's too much crap all over the place, it's not well organized. And then adding this to the mix, I think actually makes it worse. But with that said, it is kind of cool. And having a party trick like this, where you could basically have it installed on a laptop, bring it to your friend's house that has a Mac, and then run executables or Steam directly on it to play actual games on it, does make it kind of neat. Makes it definitely a conversation starter. So, like I said, guys, let me know in the comments. What do you think? And as always, the link for this is going to be in the Git. And if you jump into the repository, just look for the tube links. And under the wiki, you'll see this particular video title. And that's where you'll find this, the links to this, the operating system. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.